All right. Coach Kriebel, I am Ryan Parrish. I own Contenders Wrestling Academy. Thank you for joining us today. Coach Smoltz, can you say hey?
Hey, Coach. Thanks for coming on.
Yes,
Excited to hear you, instill some wisdom in the kids tonight.
So kind of how these have been working is we'll let you introduce yourself. We'll ask you some questions. Then we'll let the kids ask you some questions. And we'll just go till we're kind of at it. Typically, they've gone about 45 minutes to an hour. So depending on how many questions we get. So I guess we'll start off with that. If you can introduce yourself, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Hey, everybody. My name's Katie, Coach Kriebel. My name used to be Katie Downing. I started wrestling in the 1990s here in Indiana, back when I was like the only girl that is. And then I got to do a lot of firsts. I'm of that age group. So I learned here in Indiana. My start was here in Indiana. Then I went on to wrestle the first girls high school nationals in Michigan, the ISGWAs. That was my senior year. And that was my first girls tournament ever. That was pretty cool. I won that one. And then I went to the only college at the time that had women's wrestling. It was the University of Minnesota out in Morris, Minnesota. Then I got to go to Olympic Training Center when it opened its doors to women. They started the women's program there in 2003. I got to go there. I lived there for 8 years, I think. And let's see, I coached at a college, Oklahoma City University. I was an assistant coach for a year. And then I was kind of floating around for a little while. I was living with some friends in California. And then my good friend, who was one of my high school coaches, Coach Kriebel, passed away unexpectedly. And I never thought I was going to be this side of the Mississippi again. But when I came back, I got reunited with his family and with his nephew, and married him and had 2 babies with him. And I'm coaching with my old high school coach, Dave Cloud. I took Coach Kriebel's old position. And so now I'm an assistant coach at Pendleton. So it kind of did a big circle, I guess. Didn't plan it that way, but that's how it worked out. And got to I'm enjoying a lot of things. My 2 little babies, they're 5 and 3 now. So that's me in a nutshell.
Coach, I'll start us off here. So you were kind of one of the pioneers. Girls women's wrestling at the time was not as growing or as fastly growing as it is now. What were some of the differences, I guess, that you see now versus then? I mean, other than just growth, what were some of the, I guess, hardships you faced being one of the first female wrestlers in Indiana, obviously, and then even in the nation?
The one of the biggest differences, let's start with a positive. One of the biggest differences is now I love it when I get to hear a girl wrestler now experiencing something and getting to completely take for granted some things. So like all the people my age did what we were doing and were frustrated and not satisfied with enough things, pretty much so that kids now can take those things for granted that were so frustrating. I think one of the biggest things, it was just an ongoing, I was lucky enough that I had good coaches who were just good men. They were just good people, which unfortunately isn't the case for a lot of people my age, but I was fortunate enough that that was my situation. So I came from a good situation that eventually, once I earned respect in that room, I actually got a lot of support, which also wasn't the case for everybody. But it was just like, so now as a coach, you coaches know that we get to watch the the videos for safe sport, and then the safe schools, and then the other safe sports, and then the other bullying. Like there's so many. And it's funny because after watching all those videos, I was like, I've been bullied pretty much my entire wrestling career. I didn't know it because I never felt like a victim, but I did face bullying pretty much constantly. Yeah, I guess that's a start for that answer.
I'm on mute again. When was your first female-only tournament? What do you remember? What like year that was? Was it 2003?
1998. So I had one match against a girl in my high school career who was not my weight class at all. She was maybe 4 weight classes above me, but she was the only girl, so they put us in an exhibition match. Then I kind of had to if I wanted to wrestle tournaments, I had to do the senior circuit. So I went to Sunkissed Kids when I was a senior in high school, and I went to I think it was nationals at Disney that year, right before college. But honestly, I think my very first one was the ISGWA Nationals in Michigan. So that was my first all-girls tournament. It was amazing because there were 247 girls. And I remember that number just because it was such a rare thing for all of us, that all the girls were on the mats and the brothers were in the stands, and just to experience that for once, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I've been doing this now, the youth thing, for about 14 years. So this would be my 15th year going into it, and I definitely seen a growth. We went from maybe 1 or 2 girls every now and again to we have pretty steady 15 or so now. So definitely we're growing. Do any of the kids want to start us off? Who's got a question? Get your hands up. Hayden Cochran.
What kept you motivated when you were wrestling?
Let's see. I loved it. Okay, so I did like softball when I was a little kid, and I did judo as a little kid. But when I did wrestling for the first time, it was the hardest thing I had ever done in my life to that point. And I loved it that it was. So I kind of enjoyed that it was so hard. And I think I just knew that I wanted to be able to do things in wrestling, and I made dreams that weren't even possible yet. So I had a dream to be an Olympic champion, even though women's wrestling wasn't in the Olympics at all or even close. And so, like, all the other stuff in my life, like, was not as important. Since I wanted to do things, all I ever wanted to do was sports in school. So like, that helped me stay motivated. I think all of my best friends now are wrestlers. That made a big difference, because there's always gonna be days where you don't feel like it, right? But if your best friend's there and they make you laugh, or they just say the right words to make you feel better, that always, I mean, all of my best friends, we were doing the same things and we were living the same life. And that always made it easier to stay motivated. Just because and honestly, I loved it. I loved all of it. I loved to actually do it. So it wasn't like I had to force myself to do it.
Okay. Sean Nolan, looks like your hand's up.
How many years did it take for you to win your first Olympic title?
Well, I've never won an Olympic title. That was my goal. I fell short of that goal. It's actually a pretty good question, because all of my best friends that I talked about before made world teams. So you have to win nationals, and then you get your chance to go to world team trials, and then you go to world championships if you win that. And every 4 years, instead of world team trials, there's Olympic team trials. And all of my best friends were making world teams by the time they were 22, 23. And I still had not done that. There was one lady, Christy Davis, who beat me for years in a row. I didn't make my breakthrough until I was 25. So it actually took me a long time, and I kind of had to work through lots of falling just short for, gosh, almost 6 years before I started kind of making my place in the world at that level, at least. It on a smaller scale, I didn't make varsity until senior year in high school, which, I mean, it really wasn't expected. And if we had a tougher guy at that spot, I wouldn't have made it. But I had to do a lot of fighting and losing and coming short every step of the way, really. I had a good college career, but in high school, it took me 3 years of not winning so that I could have my chance on varsity senior year. And then at the senior level, so like the big leagues, I had to do that for years. So long time.
Coach, would you say that fighting on varsity and fighting through to make that and have any success in high school, was that one of the main things that kept you going on the world level and the senior level when you were falling short there? Or what motivated you to keep going, falling short, like you said, 6 years or so in a row?
I think I knew that I could do it. Like it was never completely out of reach, right? And the thing was, I mean, maybe one of the best things about wrestling is that you do see things pay off. And I think everyone kind of expects that stuff's supposed to take kind of a while. And so I just had a lot of belief that it was only a matter of time. I just had to do more work. So like every time there was a failure, it was like, okay, I felt my feelings, I went and cried and I was upset, but then it was like, okay, if I want it to be better, I got to go do more work, and however much more work it takes to get there, that's the amount I'm going to do. That was kind of where that was.
Coach Sean, you said you had one. You're muted, bud.
Now, we good?
There you go. Yep.
Coach, what advice do you have for either coaches or kids to help us continue to grow women's wrestling? How can we increase the numbers?
So one thing is getting creative. I'm trying to organize my thoughts. I have several of them. I'm trying to put them in a way that makes sense. So one of them is like, think about the amount of time though that you spend getting after a kid, a middle school boy, for example. How many times you have to be in that kid's face before you finally get him to step on the mat, right? It's kind of a lot for most of them, right? Unless they're sucked in with a brother or a friend or whatever. And I think we don't realize, myself included, how we're not doing the same, the time-wise, we don't put in as the same amount of time with girls, right? So, and that's the kind of thing, you don't have to add extra time. It's just getting in the face of girls as much as you get in the face of all the boys, the face-to-face time of it. Another thing is go ask some questions to some girls. Some of the girls that you already know, whether they're daughters and friends of kids or girls in your room, like, why are you here? What's the funnest part? What do you like? Like, if you're gonna go to a party, what's the coolest thing to be there? Or like, why do you like that singer? Or whatever it is, because girls like things a lot of times different than boys like, right? And if you're not a girl, you might not know what that is. And so ask a girl, ask a woman, ask your wife, talk to girls about, or even just like motivations. We had a coach in Tennessee who could not get through to the parents and to the girls that he was trying to recruit. He was working pretty hard at it. And he was like, because his daughter was, and he said, hey, why do you even do this? And she came back with like a notebook list that she wrote down, because that's how girls roll. We're going to like come back at you with like an organized list, right? And he read through that list and he was like, oh my gosh, yeah, like her reasons are totally different than mine. I'm trying to sell him like, this will make you the toughest thing in the world. And, you know, I'm trying to sell it like I'm selling for a boy, and her reasons were different. Although equally as noble, right? And so he got to just kind of think of it a little differently. And so he's emphasizing the confidence that you're going to get in yourself and your own abilities. You're going to make amazing friendships, and the social aspect is going to be more important for more girls, right? Like get 2 or 3 together at the same time, not only because girls like to do things with their friends socially, like the social element is important in all things generally, but it also means they might have a partner that might be a little easier to, you know, than walking into a room full of boys who may or may not want them there at all or anything, you know. So sometimes getting 2 or 3 girls at once has helped. And then utilize things like anything that you've seen, like videos of girls doing it, you know, show examples of like, yeah, this is a thing. See if you identify with anything that these amazing women, you know, find some, there's videos on Wrestle Like a Girl and USA Wrestling, and follow some social media. Yeah, and then they can just hear other girls and women doing their thing and say like, yeah, I feel that way too. It's easier than maybe what they see in the local high school room, which they might not identify with right away, at least.
Awesome. Grace and Rebel, you've had that hand up for a minute. Go ahead, girls. I got you unmuted. Go ahead.
What's your
Hey, I like your shirt.
louder?
What's your favorite move?
My favorite move, front headlock, was my bread and butter. Front headlock. Yeah, I got shot on a lot, and I was not as strong. I was always like, I was 140 and 135 and 140 in high school, so they were bigger and stronger than me. And so front headlock kind of equalized that a little bit. And it was fun. And I liked having control of the other person, and front headlock gives you a lot of control. And when you get to the senior level, it was easier to deal with a woman's head than her hips. So if I was going to shoot on a woman, it's more painful. That's just me.
Who else has
Girls-
questions?
Girls are better at shooting these days than I was.
All right. Oh, Corey Marsh, go ahead.
Oh, hey, Maddie.
Oh, Maddie, sorry.
So when you started wrestling, how did you not let the other boys and parents get in your head of not wrestling?
Sometimes they did. Sometimes they did. Sometimes they said really mean things, and things that were just hurtful and didn't really make sense, and I didn't understand why. I think, I don't know, sometimes it did get to me a little bit, but for the most part, it was easy because I did have people who did support me. I had some good coaches, I had some teammates, and my parents, right? And so I didn't like do this on purpose, but it turned out that I listened to what they had to say, the people who loved me, the things that they thought were what mattered to me. And so like, even though it was like, could hurt my feelings, I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about those people and the things that they were saying, because they didn't love me. They didn't care what I would like, my goals. So I kind of had 2 things. One was I listened to the people who loved me, right? And the people who wanted good things for me. And I made sure that those things mattered. I didn't let the other words matter so much. Like, they might have hurt my feelings, but I didn't hang on to those, and I didn't let myself feel like a victim, because the other part of it is that I had goals, and they didn't have anything to do with what the things the people were going to say. They didn't, nothing that I wanted to do had anything to do with that. And so like, almost when if I had to compare like something not nice that they would say, it's like, what is that? Like, I'm thinking about what I'm going to go do next. What does that have to do with what I'm going to do with my practice or what I want to do? It had nothing to do with it. So it was like, it almost seems silly some of the times. And sometimes when it was easier to kind of not let those things matter so much. I just remembered what I wanted to do, and I knew how much I loved doing it. It was almost like I loved doing it so much that I didn't really care. It was worth it to sometimes have my feelings hurt because I loved it so much that was bigger than the amount that it hurt. And then sometimes you can let other people hurt you more than you should. And I think I was lucky enough to have enough people whose opinions mattered enough to me, and I knew how much they loved me. So it was easier to be concentrated on that stuff rather than the things that could hurt me, and not let those things hurt me more than they should.
Coach, was it always easy for you to not give that weight or that value to people's opinion, or is it something
No.
that as you matured, right, did it get easier?
Yeah, I
Okay.
get it. For sure, it's a lot harder when your friends or somebody that you think is super cool might say something that's not cool, or that like people saying things like in high school and middle school. It's a lot harder. It's definitely harder. Because those people's opinions do matter, and you have to see those people every day, right? And then their opinions get shoved into other people's mouths, and so but yeah, it is harder in certain times in your life. But I also, so I didn't want to be friends with everybody because I had some amazing friends. And so it would also be harder if you are super outgoing and super extroverted and you want to be friends with everyone. It would be harder, but I didn't. I had some really good friends, and it really only mattered what they had to say. And so I guess also I kind of tried to stay. So, okay, one time there was a girl who went around telling everybody that we were going to have a fight after school. And she told everybody but me. I didn't know this, but I was hearing it from everybody else. And so I just kind of like, I didn't really know what to do, but I was like, well, I haven't heard anything from this girl who wants to pick a fight with me. And as soon as she wants to say something to me, maybe we'll see what happens. And she never had anything to say, right? So like, I could have just got all mad right away and tried to like, I never engaged in a fight, I guess, is the other thing too. People are going to say crappy things. And if I want to just engage in that crappy thing, it would have been a lot worse. But I never wanted to engage in the crappy things, right? So it was like, all right, if you're going to bring the crappy thing to right here, I'll have to engage with it. But most of the time, people just want to say stuff. And if I didn't want to engage with it, I didn't have to, right? I didn't, okay, awesome. You think that thing, that's awesome. Think that thing. It has nothing to do. I'm going to go to practice now.
So you knew who you were, and it didn't really matter what they said, essentially.
Yeah.
Perfect. So one more for me, at least, is what's the biggest lesson you picked up at the OTC? You said that you were there for about 8 years. What's the biggest lesson that you picked up from the Olympic Training Center?
I think the biggest thing that I picked up, that was the first time I think that I had a really solid team of women. I was on a women's team in college, but we weren't necessarily a strong team. I think the biggest thing out of the Olympic Training Center experience, I guess actually it would have to be two things. The one would be the experience with the other women and how much that made a difference, and how strong we made each other. being around other women who were also strong, that I also respected as much as I did myself, made it big. That was a huge, and it was a huge support system. The other thing was that, you know, at the Olympic Training Center, it's every part of your life. So the people in the cafeteria where we ate had plans that were for wrestlers, and they talked to us about the food and why wrestlers need these kinds of food, and then it was available, right? And then we had access to recovery, and we talked about recovery and how important recovery is and the different things you need to do to recover and how much of your training per week should be recovering. And then there was sports med who could take care of us. I mean, man, it's nice to not have to make an appointment just to go make an appointment to get your thing 3 months for, you know, I could go see a doctor about a surgery right away if I needed it, for example. And we had sports psychologists who could be a regular part of your week. And so we talked about sports psychology. So like the fact that we had such a holistic view of all those things, and it wasn't like we were trying to learn all those things in a week, you know, like I didn't have to learn it all at camp, you know, it was just kind of part of your life. That was a big part too. Just kind of also seeing the whole big picture all together. So this is
Coach,
Clara.
Hi, Clay. How are you, sweetie? So you talked about some of the difficulties, and you were in a time when, you know, not a lot of girls were wrestling like we talked about. Was there somebody that helped guide you, I guess, at a younger age? Was it a coach? Was it a parent? Who did you turn to when you were upset or when things weren't great? Was it coaches, parents, both?
I'm really introverted, so I didn't look outwardly a lot. But my parents did do some good things. I always knew how much they loved me, and I cared about winning way more than they ever did. So any pressure to win was only created by me. And then I think sometimes, honestly, whatever frustrations I had, practice, honestly, like going to practice, and I think I felt that at an early age, that like, man, when you're frustrated and you go work hard and then you feel better afterward. I don't think I knew at the time what was going on and why that worked, but I did know that worked. So like I think I let out frustrations most of my life in practice, and I think that's another reason why wrestling's so great, because it's so hard that you get all of them out, right? And you can like literally let out frustrations on your partners, and it's okay, and nobody's upset afterwards, and like a safe space to vent, you know, physically, as much as emotionally or mentally.
Right. Definitely. Getting it out of practice sometimes helps. Kids, who's got a question? Give me some hands. I'm having. Kendall Moe, what do you got? Come on, ask a question, Kendall.
So during high school, like during wrestling season, was it like classes, was like everything normal, and then when you went to practice, was it like easy or hard? How would you say it was for you most of the time?
I think what she's trying to say, because you said that you had some people who gave you a hard time, like was it normal during the day at school and then it was difficult at practice, or did it run into the school part of your day too?
I think it was kind of everywhere, and also small town. So here's what it was. I was that girl wrestler. I was that girl that wrestled. And so everybody knew me. And so everybody knew something about me. And I didn't know everybody else. So, but I'm in a school where walking down the hall, I was that girl. Everybody knew. So but I didn't know everybody else, right? And so I didn't ever have
Fine.
a whole lot of like people trying to target me, right? And so I can't really, if you're dealing with a particular bully, I don't know, I never had one that was following me around. It was more like people's opinions were always just going around. And that's the funny thing, is I hardly ever got it face to face. I always got it from, this person said this and that person says this. And then I was shielded a little bit from my parents and my coaches from any of the other parents that had a problem with it and that kind of stuff. And that probably helped me a lot. Like, I knew that people were upset, like I didn't teach my boy to hurt girls, or what about the touching, or she's just doing it for attention. And I knew those things, but they weren't in my face so much. I think my coaches and parents shielded some of that part of it. So like, yeah, it was always, right? Like, just having to walk around being that girl that everybody knows, but you don't know everybody, and everybody knows something about you, and you're like, people have opinions about your existence, right? Like, this person I've never met in real life has opinions about my life, was a constant. I guess that was it. Like, I couldn't tolerate engaging in a lot of that very well, and so I didn't. Right? So like, it definitely could have dragged me down if I went out seeking like people's opinions and went out asking for them, or like like when people said stuff, trying to like, oh, did you say that? And like, if I went out and engaged in it, I couldn't have handled it. I also got to do it before social media, which is a whole other ball game. And sometimes it's completely worth walking completely away from, because I know that it's impossible not to engage, because people are going to engage the crap out of you. And so sometimes, even if it's just for a while, just completely not even, because I just can't even, right? Kind of was it. The less you engage in the negative, because I know for sure, talking and trying to change someone's mind that doesn't want their mind changed doesn't do anything except make me exhausted. But I do know that I changed some minds just by loving what I did and being me, and going and being me as much as I possibly could be. Because then people can never unknow that, right? So before me, nobody ever imagined there was such a thing as a girl wrestler. And now they can't ever unknow that. Now it's a thing, right? Or I've never had, how many boys are like, I've never had a girl coach before. Well, now you do. This is what a girl coach looks like. This is what authority looks like. You can't unknow that. And so really just being like the youest you is kind of the long run, because you're never going to stop the negative. Even people not doing what we're doing. Everybody, mean people are mean, right? To everybody, to boys, girls, like, yeah, as much as you can keep from engaging with that, the best.
Coach, you have
And a lot of time, I'm sorry, I'll do one last. I spend a lot of time actively seeking out positive. So I literally have a text chain with 2 of my best friends, and we share 3 things we're thankful for every single day. And I'll tell you, sometimes I'm having the worst day ever, but because they tell me something that's awesome for them, it's like, okay, yeah, there's something positive. Like, I actively go find positive things to engage in. And I have to, like, it's just like workout. I have to do that on purpose. I can't let it slip. Or else all of a sudden there's a bunch of negative all around me. That was my last thought on that.
awesome. I do that too, Coach. I write down 3 things I'm thankful for every day. I don't necessarily text other people, but it's something that helps me too. So you competed in 2 world championships.
I went to 4.
4. You went to 4.
Yeah.
Okay. And you have two medals, correct? 2.
3.
3.
Well,
okay.
technically. So I went to the first year that USA Wrestling sent a junior world team. I was on that first team, and I got a silver there. Then I went in 2003, no, 5, 6, and 7, 2005, 2006, 2007 on the senior level. And I got bronze in 2006, or 2005, and 2007.
Okay, so when you were at the World Championships, that's obviously a different level of wrestling than all of us have seen. What was the one thing that we've been talking to the kids about, getting ready for matches and self-talk and positive thoughts? How did you prepare for matches at that level? I guess because to get yourself ready, was it music? Was it things? Was it positive self-talk? We've asked all of our people, and they've all had different answers. So I was just curious.
I think when I went to Junior Worlds, I had no idea like how that I should be as nervous as maybe I should. Like I was kind of clueless, and so I just did what I did like in high school. You know, I had my Walkman and whatever, and I went and kind of did my thing. I had to kind of go off and kind of do my thing, and then step on the mat. Here's one of the biggest things in 2005. Like I said, all of my teammates already, it was like their third or fourth world championship, and it was just my very first. And so that was a blessing because I had wanted it for so long and I didn't get it for so long that when I was standing in that tunnel right before you go out, I felt it. USA was literally on my back, and I was like, I'm representing my team. I'm representing my mom and dad. I'm representing all of Pendleton and freaking USA. And like right when it was about to be like too much and like start spiraling, it was like, I've wanted this for so long. I finally have my chance. This is my chance. I finally have it. So I think that was the thing. Like, it's just like with all the negative, it's going to be around you all the time. So you have to actively go find the positive and engage in the positive. So when you start getting all nervous or you start having doubts, you have to actively stop that spiral. For me, that it always feels like a spiral down to where then you just get overwhelmed by either the doubt or the nerves or whatever it is for you, right? And so for me in that moment, and once I like had that experience, it was a lot easier to be like, no. I want to be here. This is exactly what I wanted. This is finally my chance. Like, and I think we all right now have a pretty big opportunity because when we walk back in that room, we have a bigger understanding that we don't get, this is a luxury, right? What we do is a luxury and we finally get to have it, right? So any of those days where you're like at that grind when it's, December, early January, and you're like, oh, the thing is, you get to have it and it can get taken away pretty easy. Actually, turns out it doesn't take much for it to not be there. So like, yeah, anytime you're engaged in like how much you want to be here, what you're doing, it's a lot easier. Like other stuff kind of goes away.
Absolutely. Coach Sean, you have one?
Yeah, so when I was in 7th, 8th grade, which would have been like late 90s, I had to wrestle a girl and I was so nervous, okay? I was so nervous. So what advice would you give those kids out there right now that get really nervous when they have to wrestle a female?
That's a tough situation. Let me give you a short little story. So my very first match in high school was a JV match, and I don't even remember where we were, but I do remember the entire gym got quiet when I stepped on that mat, and then everyone started laughing, literal laughing. And I was just like, I couldn't even think, right? But this kid, I don't even know what it was. I caught him though, right? I caught him and pinned him. I don't even think it was on purpose, right? But the thing is, it was such a stark example of the time because the gym got silent again. And then when that boy, a freshman, a 14-year-old kid sat down, they all started laughing, right? Like, on the one hand, I've seen some amazing things, but the entire gym full of people laughed at a 14-year-old kid, and then they started laughing at a boy, and it's ridiculous. So it's just to say that I understand that it's tough for anyone that has to step out there. But it's only an extended version of what it is every time you step out there, right? You're afraid of getting embarrassed, right? You're afraid of losing. It's just a heightened version of that because it's a female. So the biggest cure for that one is we get to train together but compete separately, and that's in the works right now. We're working on that. But for now, the biggest thing is having it happen more so that it's not just like a complete embarrassment, like more people seeing that girls can compete. So, that boy, if she's tough enough to beat you, she's pretty good because you're probably stronger. You might not be, but probably are, and whatever bullying you faced, son, I guarantee she's faced it too. And so if there's even a little bit of you that can respect that, then focus on that part of it, because if she beats you, she's probably pretty decent, right? And there's nothing to be ashamed of. You shouldn't be ashamed of losing ever, right? If you're going to learn something, and if you have pride in yourself, stepping out there and what you're able to do, winning and losing isn't going to erase who you are, right? Or the pride that you can have. And so, like, I never want to be insensitive because it is definitely a tough thing, but guarantee it's been every bit and probably more tough for that girl that's out there. And yeah, I mean, the more everyone is focused on kids and the more everybody can be focused on living a life of honor, win or lose, right? It's the things that don't change whether you win or lose. Like if you worked your butt off and if you face that fear, like even take a second to feel proud of yourself. You had to step into a match that was even scarier than that match you had against a boy last week. And you faced that fear, and whatever happened, knowing that you faced that fear, I mean, that's something you can be proud of. I mean, I guess it's just choosing to really emphasize the things that are worth focusing on. Yeah, the things that don't change, whatever the outcome is, like being able to focus on that. And then also just, it's okay to acknowledge, yeah, man, it's a tough situation. You're in a tough situation right here. But you can face it, that kind of thing. Like, yeah. I don't know. I hope that helps.
Hayden Cochran, you got your hand up. Go ahead, bud.
What skill or move would you advise kids my age to work on the most?
Ooh, that is a good question, Hayden. It's not the one that guarantees that you're going to win every match. Okay? You don't need that big giant move that you can get away with right now. What you need is to be able to keep your head up in every position, to keep your booty down in every position, to keep your arms where they're supposed to be. It's all of the position things that are the most boring and the most that you get yelled at the most for, those things, 100%. If you also, your job, literally it's your job, Hayden, right now to love it. It's your job to have fun right now. And it's your job to try and listen to your coaches and grow, so that you can win later. If you've got a move that you can pull off against kids now, against most kids, that's great. But if that's the only one you ever do, it's going to stop working. Guaranteed. It's going to stop working at some point. The thing you need is the thing that can make you good at the next level. It's going to be positioning. College coaches beg for this. They don't want the kids that can like pull off amazing moves. They want kids that can do all of the basics and can stay in good position so that they can take it to a next level, right? So anything that you've had to do like 50 times in a practice, that's the thing, right? Any of the thing where you have to do that drill that's like 1, 2, 3, this, 1, 2, 3, this, those ones. That's the ones that you need to do. It's
Coach,
not
I'm
going to
so
be a
glad you
headlock
said
and
that.
soup at this level.
I am so glad you said that, especially the big move Hayden over there, because he needed to hear it from somebody other than me and Coach Sean
Yeah.
up there. He needed to know that Greco's not life all the time. So,
It's awesome to have, buddy. And that's the other thing. If you're awesome at it, you don't have to try it. You've got it always in your back pocket. When you need it real bad, pull it out, right? But the thing you're actually working on, you don't need to like practice that more. You don't need to do that against the kid in live that you can throw with it 5 times. I mean, after the 5th one, you don't need to do that ever against that kid. Try another move against that kid. And then if you can get that move 5 times, then it's another one, right? Yeah, you don't need that one move that you can get against the one kid in practice 6 times in a row. Somebody will stop it in high school.
That's so true. We ban Pee-wee headlocks, Coach. We do not allow anybody to throw a headlock until they're older. And some people argue with me about that, but I don't let any of the littles throw those.
It's hard because that was the only way I survived. Like I have a soft spot in my heart for side headlock. But I have to agree, when you get down to it, it's not going to help you when you get to middle school. It's not going to help you once you get to high school. Yeah.
Maddie, it looks like you got that hand up again. Go ahead, girl. And then Kendall, I'll come to you.
So, Coach Kriebel, what made you start wrestling? Like, what inspired you?
So my brother wanted to be a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, is the truth. He wanted to be a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, so he asked my dad if he could go to karate. And he said, well, if you do a year of judo, then you can do karate. Because judo's a lot more like wrestling. It's not so much kicking and punching, because the truth was he was going to be doing this in the neighborhood the next day. So I went with them to watch a judo practice, and it was the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like, I had seen gymnastics before that, and my mom always loved gymnastics on the Olympics, and it looked like 2-person gymnastics to me, watching these people do judo. And so I thought that was so cool, and so I did that first. And then when I got to be 5th, 6th grade, I started to notice at tournaments that kids that had never done judo before, they were wrestlers, they'd come to judo on their very first day, they were like kicking butt already. And I was like, oh, I need to know some of that, right? Because imagine what I could do with that against other girls. And so I kind of grew up with some boys in my judo club. I'd known since I was 8. And so when they were talking about when wrestling was going to come up, I started going to some preseason stuff before my freshman year. And then that moment where it was the hardest thing that's ever happened to me before happened. And I literally laid on the bench in the locker room for a good half hour. Like, I don't know if I can do this. But after a week, I knew that I could like survive it. Then I was hooked. So I got in through judo because it looked so cool. And then because it was so hard, I got hooked.
Kendall, do you want to go ahead?
So, what was your response most of the time, and what would your response be now of when a guy you were going to wrestle like forfeits or like doesn't want to wrestle you?
I had it all, man. I had it all. I had guys who tried to hurt me. I had guys who said hi to me at the beginning of the tournament and then distinctly smelled of Dracar Noir cologne really strong during my match. And then I had guys who would run away until I did something, and then it made them really mad. Like, I never got a match against Cathedral because that was policy back then. They would not wrestle girls. It was just kind of like, I think I came to peace with the fact that it was so clear how I couldn't change anyone's mind or their opinion or how they were going to be, that it was kind of like, well, if that's their decision, it's super sad that they're just going to give me 6 points. And it bummed me out. But I also, like, I guess it was just so evident. It was so obvious that, like, I could throw a tizzy, but if I'm going to throw a tizzy, it's going to be pretty much tizzy 24/7. And it was so obvious that it wasn't going to change. So I just didn't try anymore. So, I guess I had so partners, right, in the room. Early on, I essentially only got like the leftovers. I didn't know it at the time, but I got the leftover kids. Nobody wanted to wrestle with me, and then the other kid that nobody else wanted to wrestle with wrestled that kid. And I worked my butt off, and I clearly became clear to everybody I was a decent partner to have. And then coaches started throwing me against people that didn't want to work because I was going to work, so that helped, right? And then I ended up with just the next year it was like I had one of those kids who actually got better, and we were like partners. He was my guy that we could be good partners with. And then by senior year, it wasn't as big a deal because the freshmen coming in didn't know any different, right? So like, I don't know, my work had to speak for itself, I guess. So grab what you can when you can, and you gotta, and then value those ones that are good ones. I don't care who you are though, a good training partner, man, it's worth it. It's one of the lifetime things. Like a good person worth marrying, person worth training with. They're close in my world, like as in importance and how amazing it can be in your life.
Coach, what are the things you try to when you have a good training partner? What are the things you want your training partner to do that these kids could emulate?
So I honestly, there's got to be that balance between somebody that you feel competitive enough that you like really don't like it if they start doing better than you, so then you have to do better, but also that balance of support too, that that they actually they're cheering for you. They should be cheering for you just like you're cheering for them. So like if you're equal parts support and competitive, then you can really push each other. And that's exactly what I did. Essentially my drilling style and warm-up style and cool down style and sprint style was trying to make the other person quit first, right? The first person who admits that they want to go get a drink of water, they lose, like in secret, right? But like we all know that I win, right? If they want to quit first, or they're too tired, they want to like slow down first, or like they have to tie their shoe, like I win, that was like the kind of, and so I definitely, some people wouldn't want to be partners with me because they knew what their practice was going to be. And I was okay with that because I only wanted to be with the ones that wanted that, right? And so then we could compete with each other. Funny thing, like right now, training for me, I'm 40, I've had 2 kids. It's a rough slap in the face right now. My body can't do what it used to do, and my training has to change, although my heart isn't any different. And the funny thing is, Takara was a lady who beat me. I had 2 major opponents in America who beat me, and Takara was one of them. So she, for a long time, was the one worst competitor, like best competitor. But now we're like virtual training partners, because it was like, I don't get that same thing with a kid, and then there's not the same thing with another adult, like a dad of a wrestler right now. And I don't necessarily have the same thing with another woman who's doing different kind of training. It was like my best training partner was my best competitor, turns out. Like I reached out, and now, man, because we're competitive enough to keep us going, but we're also supportive of each other. That's what's a good training partner.
Sean, you got your hand up. Go ahead. Can you unmute yourself, bud? There you go.
So did your brother tease you? Did your brother also tease you when he found out that you were doing wrestling?
No. Okay, so my older brother, he has Down syndrome, which is like a form of mental retardation. My younger brother, the one that wanted to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, he is my little brother. And I was always one of the biggest people in my class, and he was always one of the smallest in his, and I'm 3 years older than him. So he he didn't get to make fun of me very much ever. So yeah, no, he didn't. Because I probably would have beat him up. Yeah, and in fact, he probably had more. He had to face that too. Like, oh, your sister can beat you up, and I worried about that a little bit too because I felt protective of him, and I wondered about that. But then I heard that happening to him. He was like, okay, she can beat you up too. So like, I don't know, that solved that. No, my brother didn't make fun of me for that. Teammates had to do that, but not for wrestling, for not getting a takedown or something.
Brady Miller, is your hand up, buddy? If it is, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Did your brother ever become a Ninja Turtle?
Kinda. My brother, so I don't know. I don't know how to say this humbly. All the years that I beat him up made him super tough. He's actually a really cool guy now. He's bigger than me now, and he went into the Army, and he was on like Secret Services, so he like protected really important people in Washington D.C. for a while. Like he's that cool guy that are like, the big Jim's on the move, and the guy in the van that was like, okay, we're ready, let's go. That was him, right? And so now he's a police officer in Muncie. So not an actual Ninja Turtle, but almost as cool as one. So keep dreaming your dreams, guys. Someday you have to be the real life version of Ninja Turtles.
All right. Maddie, give me just a second. I see your hand up. I'll let you go next. Does anybody else besides Maddie have a question? Give me your hand now so we can kind of start to wind this down. I got one for Coach after Maddie. Anybody else? Okay, Maddie, I'll let you go, and then maybe me and Coach Sean will ask one more, and then we'll let Coach out of here. Go ahead, Maddie.
Were your parents supportive of you wrestling, or did they not like the idea?
I think my mom was always kind of like, why would you want, like, get all sweaty and gross? Like, I don't get it. But she was supportive, right? She never understood, but she was always supportive. My dad, he was supportive. So he and Coach Cloud actually had a meeting before I ever stepped into the room, like, together, about me joining the wrestling team. And Coach Cloud said, man, I've never had a girl want to wrestle before. And my dad was like, well, I've never had a daughter want to wrestle before. So here we are. So I think it was more like, I was lucky because for my dad, what mattered was how hard I worked. And so it kind of didn't matter. Like I kind of always liked sports. And so he was always around in all the other sports that I did. And so I think for him, it mattered a lot more, like, that, I had to make him proud by how I did stuff. Like if I worked hard in practice, if I didn't ever try to quit, if I, won and lost without being a jerk and those kinds of things. So yeah, I'm pretty lucky that both my parents were probably the biggest deal. And then my coaches, Coach Kriebel and Coach Cloud, they were like, well, we're going to give you a chance, but we're going to make you prove yourself. But once I prove myself, then they've had my back too. So like, that's really, I think, honestly, just those two people and then my coaches were all I needed to have my back, to make it all. It would have been a whole different thing. If I would not have had support, I don't know if I would have fought through to like keep doing it. I'm really not sure. If I had to like fight against, like, go to court or something to get in the room, I don't know. Yeah, I had support. It was important.
So, Coach, my last question for you is simply, what advice? Sorry, my dog. What advice would you give parents whose daughters want to wrestle?
So, if their daughters are already saying they want to do it, awesome. right? So huge drop off, like 70% of all kids stop sports around middle school, and even more than that, girls stop doing it. And so anytime you can keep a girl involved in those things, just like STEM, if your daughter ever says anything awesome about STEM or sports, then that's awesome, because we're trying to fight just to keep anyone that's enjoying it. So then the other thing is understand that she is going to be facing bullying all the time, right? So then you just arm her to handle bullies. And you'd like to think that it's not going to be, but they're going to be bullied the whole time. And if they can handle that, then they're going to be really tough. And then there's amazing opportunities. So then that's the other thing is jump on some opportunities. If they're starting to show that they actually really like it, start thinking about, hey, go find out what those opportunities are. Hand out my number. They can ask me what those opportunities are, because there's a lot of them and they're really great. And then understand, I guess, have a big picture on what's important, because either she's facing too many things in the beginning to keep her in it, but if she breaks through that part, then it can get real quick to like, oh, you're going to be Olympic now and you're like 12, and that's not. No, you got to be 12 while you're 12, right? And your goals for a 12-year-old have to stay goals for a 12-year-old so that they can go be big time. Just because the pool is so much smaller, you kind of have to protect what their job is at each age group, because so quickly people will be coming at them to like, oh, they show some promise and they want to do this. We're going to start treating you like you're already in the Olympics and you got to train like that. And like, no, you got to you're going to have to protect what they need to be at each age group, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense, Coach, because one of the first things we get when girls are, oh, they can get scholarships, oh, they can go to the Olympics, oh, not that many people are doing it, so we can push them this way. So I get that answer. I'm going to end us with one more question, kind of a two-part question. You wrestled on world teams. You were around world team athletes, world team coaches. What is the one thing you would say all those people have in common, having practiced with them, having worked with them? And then lastly, what advice would you give parents of young wrestlers in general, not just female wrestlers, but just in general? What can we tell these parents that I know are in the background listening in? So,
all of the elite level people, they were going to do what they were going to do every day, all the time, whether a coach was looking or not. Like almost all of them are the ones that would stay after a little bit, after practice a little bit. They were the ones who cared about school. They were the ones who overcame something on their own, right? And so if you're that, even the ones that are talented at a certain level, you have to be the one that gets your butt up every day to do it. Other people can't do it for you. And so the ones that are making it at that level, in one way or another, they're pursuing excellence in more than one thing, right? They actually pursue excellence as a way of life, right? So, yeah, they all want it for their own reasons, and they're able to do it for themselves. I would say that's the thing that everyone, once you get to that high level. And then for parents of kids now, the biggest thing is it really has to be their job to have fun as a kid. Like, even to the point of like scheduling in fun factor. So if you got 2 tournament options and one is going to be more fun with a funner group of kids, but maybe not as good a competition, that might honestly be worth it for the kid, right? If that kid, for whatever reason, gained 2 pounds the day before a tournament, and you might have to lose 2 pounds, might be a good day to take a week off. We're taking this weekend off, and then you can start on Monday maybe for next week, because it's got to be about fun. Like, you have to actively like try to make it fun, because that's the other thing. Like, none of us hated training at the training center. It was the hardest training we'd ever done. It was the most like mass of training we've done in our lives. But we all wanted to be there. And if we had not had fun along the way, if we hadn't started loving it, we wouldn't be there at all. So it's literally their job to have fun. And then they got to learn the things, anything that can make them better for whatever's next. So if they're in elementary, what's going to help them be ready for middle school? If they're in middle school, what's going to help them be a high school wrestler? Not the thing that makes you win matches at a middle schooler, what makes you win matches when you get to high school, right? And then being trainable for a college coach if you're in high school, just as an option. That's what, yeah, just have your winning, like, cannot be, winning happens when you got your heads on the right ideas and the person comes first. And if they don't love it, then man, find the thing they do love so they can go be awesome at that, right? You can't force a kid to be awesome at something they don't love. And so, yeah, I guess find the thing they love and then help them go be awesome at it. That would be the thing for parents. And hang out with other parents who also agree with that, right? Like, that's the other thing. Don't engage with a-holes. You know, like, that's not what it's about. And then I guess here's one more thing. For parents or even older kids, for younger kids, being more willing to, if something's not okay, you don't have to start a fight, but you can say that's not okay. If you are a wrestler and you see a non-wrestler kid getting bullied, you don't have to go pick a fight, but you definitely can say like, hey, that's not okay. Or if a parent sees something, it can be difficult with other adults, but I do think the more of us feel like it's okay to just to say like, hey, that's not cool, that's not the best, you know, and just to say that's not good if something's not good. I think that should be something everybody, more people are protecting the best things, then it'll be better for everybody.
Coach, I want to not keep you too much longer, but I want to tell you thank you very much for coming on and talking to the kids today. They learned a valuable lesson. I know I learned a lot. We've taken questions, so I'm going to give you guys a chance. I want you guys to all tell Coach thank you. And Coach, if we get back to wrestling here soon, we'll have to have you down for a camp. You can run a camp in our room and help us out a little bit. So kiddos, if you want to tell Coach thank you, I'm going to unmute everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for hanging out.
All right, Coach, thanks again. We will see everybody. We'll have a challenge for you guys tomorrow. And Coach, thank you very much. And we'll have to have you down sometime. So see you next time. All right, guys.
Bye.